Uniquely.
Uniquely. Uniquely.
Uniquely. Uniquely.
Uniquely.
Uniquely. Uniquely. Uniquely.
Issaquah.
Hello and welcome to Uniquely Issaquah, a conversation about people, places, and things that make Issaquah so unique. I'm your host, Tim Smith, and on this first episode, we'll be taking a closer look at Issaquah's open space and trail system. Sometimes referred to as Trailhead City, Issaquah features miles of wilderness and urban trails that start right here in our community. Joining us to help take a closer look at these trails and open space is avid outdoorsman and City of Issaquah's open space steward, Matt Mechler. Welcome, Matt.
Thanks, Tim.
First, let's start off and talk about your role with the city. What is a open space steward?
Well, my role as open space steward for the City of Issaquah is I basically manage and maintain all of our city open space, which is right around 1,500 acres of open space that we have throughout just the city limits. And that includes upland areas, wetland areas, our trail system, which has just within Issaquah about 15 miles of trails. And I'm, out there working with volunteers. We're planting trees. We're removing invasives, doing some trail maintenance, some cases, some trail construction, kind of a little bit of everything if it has to do with our city open space.
So open space in the city, is most of it passive open space? And if it is, can you kind of explain what passive open space means?
Yeah, I would say most of it is passive. Basically, it's just there for hiking, nature viewing. So there's not like a lot of structures. It's not like you're going to a developed park where there's playgrounds and things like that. It's more natural trails, maybe boardwalks, like I said, viewing areas. Just more out in nature is kind of what it all entails.
So inside the city limits itself, about how many trails or hikes are there within the city?
We actually have quite a few hikes and trails within the city. We have our soft trail system, which are non-paved, and there's about 15 miles of trails just within the city limits. And then we have also our urban trails, which are paved trails that go along Gilman Boulevard, Maple Street, Juniper Street, Rainier Boulevard, things like that. But just hiking trails alone, I would say if you count the urban trails, there's probably 20 plus miles of trails just within the city limits. And then as you go outside the city limits, we have probably hundreds of miles of trails by the time you include all the trails on Tiger Mountain, Cougar Mountain, Squawk Mountain, and then continuing on eastward.
So some of these soft trails that are in the city, let's talk about those. Where do those take you?
Well, it's pretty neat because you can start pretty much anywhere in downtown Issaquah and find a trail within a short distance. So we have trails that can take you up onto Cougar Mountain. If you were over by Tibbetts Valley Park and you wanted to walk down SR 900 south, we have the Bear Ridge Trail. And from that trail, even though only a small portion is in the city of Issaquah, that trail will lead you up onto Cougar Mountain, which will then take you to the whole entire trail system up on Cougar Mountain Regional Wildland Park. So again, probably tens or 20s worth of miles of trail up there. If you wanted to go up Squawk Mountain, then you could hit a bunch of trails within the city limits and then hike all of Squawk Mountain, which goes into the state park and some King County lands. And then, of course, we got Tiger Mountain, and from there, again, we have easy trails that are down by Lake Tradition and that are all within the city. And then you could go up to the top of Tiger, Pupal Point. You could also go over to Grand Ridge, take the Grand Ridge Trail, which leads to Duthie Hill. So from Issaquah, you can basically go pretty much anywhere you want, and
So you basically can literally, if you live in the city of Issaquah, walk out your back door and be within a mile or two of a trail that could take you on a day, take you all day to get from one end to the other.
I would say so, yeah. As long as you wanted to hike, if you wanted to get real serious and even head towards Snoqualmie Pass, you could take trails that would eventually tie into each other and take you all the way to that distance or up to the pass and further.
Well, that's amazing, and I think that is a really unique thing about the city of Issaquah. Let's talk about some of these trails. What are some of the family hikes, that are really family-friendly that you could take maybe young children on that we have here in our community?
Well, we have a lot of great trails, just like we were talking about, within walking distance, or if you wanted to do just a short drive up I-90, we could go to the Lake Tradition Trailhead up there. And from that point, you could do a number of trails that are really all family friendly. We have the Around the Lake Trail, there's the Bus Trail, Swamp Trail, the Brink Trail, the Big Tree Trail, the Wetlands Trail, and a little bit more difficult would be the Adventure Trail for a family. But all of those are great hikes that are, all family friendly.
What are some of the features of those hikes? So like the Swamp Trail, what's that one like?
Well, the Swamp Trail is pretty cool because that is it's a short trail, has a little bit of elevation, but it allows you to go down and actually view a swamp just right up close and personal. And it's a fun trail for families because we have a kind of a family walk there. It's called Zoe and the Swamp Monster. So it takes you, there's an interpretive brochure usually at the trailhead, or if not, you can download it from the city website. And that brochure will take you through a series of 7 interpretive panels that are along that trail. And it talks about Zoe and the swamp monster. And Zoe's a raccoon that is afraid to go into the swamp because there's rumors that there's a monster that lives there. And in the process, Zoe finds out the swamp is actually really a cool place with a lot of neat wildlife, and it's not so scary after all. But there is a really neat boardwalk that goes through there. The boardwalk is seasonally closed, so like from October 15th to April 15th, it's closed just because it's really wet and it can be slippery. But then after April 15 and all through the summer, the boardwalk's open, so it's really a fun hike for families to go check out and kind of explore a wetland. And from there, you can link to other trails and make a nice little loop if you wanted to.
What are some of the urban hikes? Like if you don't want to go up in the hills and you just want to stay on the valley floor here within the city, what are some of the hikes and what do those offer?
A couple really good urban hikes would be the Rainier Trail. It kind of takes you could start at 2nd Avenue, kind of down by the Issaquah High School, walking north, and you would walk by the community center, walk by City Hall, and then you're heading down towards Gilman Boulevard. And so that just kind of allows you to see what's in downtown Issaquah, without having to drive. If you wanted to stop by some restaurants or, get something to drink, everything is close by. That leads you down to Gilman Boulevard, and from Gilman Boulevard, depending on the time of year that you're walking down there, we have the edible landscape tour down there too. So we have fruit trees, and there's berries, and there's just a ton of stuff that if you're there at the right time of year, you could kind of just eat your way down the street. And
the city encourages people to come down and literally eat the edible landscape, right?
That is correct. Yeah, we encourage people to come down and pick the fruit and enjoy it. Everything it has to offer.
Do you know the story behind that? When did that start? When was the idea of an edible landscape? Was that something that just developed naturally, or was that an actual idea that the city put together?
That was an actual idea, and I believe it probably started around 1984, I want to say. I believe the street improvements down on Gilman Boulevard were completed in 1985, and then so at that time, all the trees, of course, and bushes were really, really small. So there wasn't a lot of fruit in those early years, or fruit and berries. But now that it's, however old it is now, close to 30 years old, a lot of those trees are really mature, and you can really get a lot of fruit, and apples and pears and, like I say, blueberries, just about anything down there. And we have a brochure on our city website that you can kind of look at, and it kind of gives you a tour of where to go and what the different plants are and when things are in season. So, yeah, that's a fun one. Another great urban trail that I think is probably my favorite urban trail would be the Pickering Trail. And that trail is over by the Pickering Barn and Costco, and it kind of goes all along Issaquah Creek. There's a couple viewing areas, so you can see the creek. Again, depending on the time of year, you can come over, or you can walk the trail and see salmon swimming up. There's a nesting pair of bald eagles down by the Pickering Barn, so that's kind of fun to watch, especially this time of year in early spring. They're out flying around. That trail then can either link you to the East Lake Sammamish Trail, which goes all the way to Redmond, or you can kind of go the opposite direction and towards Lake Sammamish State Park and tie into the state park trail system over there. And if you wanted to walk from downtown Issaquah and down Rainier Trail to the East Lake Sammamish Trail to the Pickering Trail to the state park, that's a great lunchtime walk too if you got that much energy. So it's a lot of fun.
That's great. That just really sounds like a really fun way to spend a nice afternoon and kind of get the feel of the heart of the city. That's really, really incredible. What are some of the scenic hikes? You get up there in Tiger and it's really forest, a lot of dense forest. Are there any hikes that you can just really see some beautiful views and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I would say probably the most scenic hike that's close by would be Pupal Point. And again, you can access that from downtown Issaquah, or if you wanted to drive a little bit south on Hobart Road, there's a parking area down there. The trail system down there is a little bit steeper, but it gets you up to the view area really quick. And just so you know, that's the area where if you're driving down Hobart Road, or even if you're in downtown Issaquah and you see all the paragliders soaring around, that's where they take off from. So from that point up there, once you get to the top, you have a great view of downtown Issaquah. You can see towards Seattle, Bellevue, and if you're looking at the other view area on the opposite side, you can see Mount Rainier, and it's a pretty cool view area. But you're absolutely right. There are a lot of trees around and a lot of our other hikes, so I would say that's the best viewpoint.
So how long is that hike up to Pupal Point?
If you go down on Hobart Road and park at that trailhead, I think, I'd have to look this up though, I think it's only about 1.5 miles up to Pupal Point itself. But like I say, it's very, very steep.
Wow,
so
that must be a real steep incline.
Yeah, you want to make sure you're wearing good sturdy boots and are prepared for a steep climb. If you wanted to make a little bit longer hike, you could be at the high school or even at the community center and walk down the Rainier Trail, go up to the high school trail, and then take the Pupal Point Trail. And I believe that is around 4 miles. It's a little bit more gradual, takes you a little bit through some more forests, but it's definitely a little bit longer hike, especially round trip. But it's there's a couple different ways to get there.
Oh, that's great. So with all these different types of hikes that surround us, what are some of the better times of the year to take specific hikes? I know that we have some color change. We get fall colors. Is there times where it's safer? We also have wild animals out in the surrounding areas. Is there anything that people should be concerned or precautions people should take so they don't run into a cougar on Cougar Mountain or a tiger on Tiger Mountain, so to speak? That kind of stuff.
Well, yeah. I think just about any time of year is a good time to hike around Issaquah. It totally depends on what you're up for. If you're looking for less people out on the trail, less crowded trail conditions, maybe fall, winter is a better time to go. There's not as many leaves on the trees. You can see more of the kind of natural, I guess, surroundings or hillsides with less vegetation cover. And like you mentioned, fall color. We do have some pretty nice fall color, depending on how our summer and fall is going. So that can be a lot of fun, especially up at Lake Tradition. Springtime's a great time to go hiking too, up around all of our trails. We have a lot of native wildflowers that are blooming right now. We have the trilliums and bleeding hearts, and it's just always refreshing to get out after a long winter and get out in the woods and check those things out. Wintertime, that's like I said, pretty much any time of year is great. Wintertime's fun, especially if you're on those cold, crisp days, and if things are frozen, you get some really neat ice features forming in the creeks and ponds and a couple of the lakes that we have in Issaquah. And like you mentioned, we do actually have quite a bit of wildlife around Issaquah, which is really, really neat. And I think it's something that people, when they get to see wildlife, they should be pretty excited about it. We do have cougars, we do have bears, bobcat, coyotes, a lot of deer, and then we have lots of different types of bird species. And when you get to see something like that, it's pretty exciting. You just want to make sure, especially if you see a bear or something like that, that you always leave an out for the animal. You don't want to go chasing after it or try to corner it, or you can. It's good to observe them, but you want to let them be and not, chase them around or anything like that. But it's pretty exciting to see that stuff just so close to Issaquah.
Yeah, it is amazing that there is so much natural, so much wildlife just at our back door, really. I know that in the last year or so, the city of Issaquah has placed, or you have placed, some wildlife cameras around our community. And I kind of wanted to talk about those wildlife cameras because I've seen a lot of the footage, and it's really amazing to see the cougars and the bobcats and the bears and beavers and even squirrels just playing around in the forest. They're really, really neat footage. What was the idea behind getting these wildlife cameras out there, and why is it important for people to see this kind of footage out there?
Well, it's kind of funny because when I as my job, I'm out in the field, probably 90% of the time, and believe it or not, I don't really see that much wildlife when I'm out in the field, but I know it's there. I always see deer, things like that around, but it was kind of more of something I wanted just to see what was out there and be able to share those types of things with our citizens. So it started just as with one camera. I found a really good animal trail that looked like it was just a deer trail because there was deer tracks on it. So I thought, well, I'll set the camera up here and we'll just kind of see what type of wildlife is out here. And I knew there was going to be deer out there. Well, it was a interesting learning lesson for me because I learned that, like humans, animals like to take trails too. And if it's hiking trails or their own game trails, pretty much everything uses an animal trail. So the first camera I set out, obviously there was a deer on it, and then I observed bears, coyotes, bobcats, raccoons, possums, pretty much everything. So once I started getting those videos or still images, then it was kind of a learning experience. And like I said, it was a good thing learn for me, and then be able to share those with the city, which are now placed on the city website. And because I think a lot of the public, like me, they don't get to see what's actually sharing our open space. So it's been fun to be able to do that.
That's great. That's great. And I tell you, just for the audience, if you haven't seen those videos, they are short, but they are kind of engaging. They've done really well on the city's YouTube channel. Just a little quick 30 seconds of a bobcat scratching on a tree. It's just amazing how engaging watching wildlife in their natural habitat just out your back doors. It's really fun. I was thinking about, we hear about open space, and the city really has put an effort about getting a lot of open space. And we talked about it being passive. But I guess my question is, in some of these open spaces, is there an opportunity to walk on that open space and get to the edge of the creek and look around? Or is it really just kind of like, this is the natural habitat that we're trying to preserve for generations to come? Or is it a combination of both? How is the open space kind of kept for the city?
Again, that's another great question. It's kind of both. It is all public property, so it is accessible to the public. Some of our open space does have trail systems through it. So, for instance, we have Squawk Valley Park, and just kind of north of the main developed park is an area where we did a big creek restoration project. And we tried to enhance the creek there, provide more habitat for salmon and wildlife. But as part of that project, we also built like a trail system too. So it's a really easy, flat trail, and it goes to some viewing areas that you can see the creek. We encourage people to stay on the trail and not go walking through the wetlands and things like that, because there are areas that are sensitive that we try to keep people out. Like wetlands or maybe a steep slope, things like that. But I would say probably most of our open spaces, we encourage people to go check it out and explore. And it all depends how adventurous you are. If you want to just go on the trails, that's great. And for the most part, we encourage that. But we do have areas like down by Lake Sammamish Park. We have what's called Sammamish Cove Park. And that's just kind of a big grassy area. So if you wanted to walk out there and it's a great place to go bird watching, actually. There's a huge variety of birds down there, so if you wanted to kind of go out there, there's no real formalized trail, but you could definitely walk out there and check things out. And again, depending on time of year, this time of year the grass is getting pretty tall, but if you went like in early spring or something like that, it's pretty easy to walk around out there and explore.
Speaking of bird watching, I'm just going to jump subjects really quick. There's a lot of people that like to go out and they like to photograph wildlife. and especially birds. Is there specific areas or trails where you might see something unique, or that you might promote to local nature photographers, that they could go out and get some great scenery shots? Of course, we talked about Pupal Point, and I've been up there and got some footage in the past, and it is amazing from up there. On a clear day, you can see everywhere.
Yeah.
But what about wildlife? What about, are there any specific trails or areas where you might get a blue heron or see a woodpecker or a chance to catch a deer, maybe, if you were patient and quiet enough? I mean, are there certain areas?
Yeah, you betcha. I talked about a little bit earlier, the Pickering Trail. Pickering Trail is a great spot because you are going along the creek for quite a distance, and it's a great place to see blue herons. I mentioned earlier that there's the bald eagle nest down there. So especially this time of year in the spring, they're really active right now. So if you go down there, you can see the bald eagles flying around. There's also some ospreys. We have actually a nesting pair of ospreys at Tibbetts Valley Park up on one of the light poles down there. So if you just wanted to drive someplace and park in the parking lot and basically walk just a few feet, you'd have a great area to see nesting osprey in the spring and early summer. If you wanted to not really be in the city and you wanted to be out more in the woods and experience some wildlife, again, the Lake Tradition Plateau is a great place to go. And there are two lakes up there. There's Tradition Lake and there's Round Lake, and both of those have a lot of waterfowl. We actually have some wood ducks I've seen up at Round Lake, and I'm sure there's probably some at Lake Tradition too. I just haven't seen them there. So those are great places to see a lot of different types of waterfowl, or even deer. I've seen deer up at Lake Tradition. I usually get a few phone calls every year from people who spot a bear or something up there as they're hiking too. So you have a chance to see something a little bit bigger and a little bit more exciting too up in that area. But again, if you were to go up on Squawk Mountain or Cougar Mountain, you'd probably have all those same opportunities. So there's a lot of wildlife around to view. And then, of course, in the fall when the salmon are running, then if you want to come view salmon, we have lots of great places to view salmon at. Again, the Pickering Trail, or even if you just did any of the street crossings that cross over Issaquah Creek, you can stand there and watch salmon come up, which is pretty fun.
That's amazing. Well, this has been really good. Is there anything else you'd like to say, to people that might be listening to this about our trail system here in Issaquah and about getting outdoors and enjoying all these assets? Anything you want to add?
Well, I think, one thing I forgot to mention is if you do go up to Lake Tradition, we actually, I mentioned that we do have the Zoe and the Swamp Monster brochure, which is kind of a self-guided tour. We also have another self-guided tour, which is called the Lake Tradition Forest Walk, and it kind of takes you on the Lake Tradition trail, Lake Tradition kind of shoreline trail, and then it connects to the bus trail. And it's a walking trail that has like 12 different stations on it, and it kind of talks about some of the native plants, geology, history of the area. And so that's kind of a fun little walk to do. And then, one thing that I think maybe we should talk about too real quick is just some of the trailheads and how to get to where,
definitely.
Where you want to park and what you need to at these places where you park at. Probably the most popular trailhead is the Tradition Plateau Trailhead, which is right off of I-90, off of exit 20. And that, if you're driving eastbound on I-90 and you're driving by on a weekend, be it rainy or sunny, you will see cars parked everywhere up there. That's kind of the main trailhead to Lake Tradition and even Tiger Mountain. If you do go up there and park, you want to make sure you have a Discover Pass, which is a state pass that you need. It's required up there. But it gets you right to where the main trails are, and there's a restroom facility, interpretive brochure or interpretive signage up there, kiosks, and it's just a great starting point for a lot of the trails. If you wanted to park someplace a little bit further away and get a good cardio on your way up to Lake Tradition, the East Sunset Way Trailhead is a great place to park too. It fills up pretty quick in the morning, but that'll take you basically up to Lake Tradition also. You have a pretty steep climb to begin with, but it'll take you right up there, and from there you can go pretty much anywhere up on Tiger Mountain. And if you wanted to even park down by the community center, and from there you could access pretty much all the trails on Tiger Mountain too, or even Squawk Mountain for that matter. It's not that far. And from there you could walk up, the Rainier Trail to the high school trail, which will take you up to the plateau. Or if you wanted to go to Squawk Mountain, you could go over to the Squawk Mountain Access Trail, which is just a little bit south of the fish hatchery, and that'll take you up on all the trails up on Squawk Mountain too. So those are a couple of the main trailheads within towns that are easily accessible and get you to where you want to go.
Is this information on the city website by any chance?
A lot of it is, yeah, like the Lake Tradition Forest Walk, that brochure is on the city website. Zoe and the Swamp Monster brochure is on the city website. I believe if you go and access like our city GIS map system, it has a lot of the trails on there to kind of give you a good idea of where you want to go.
Okay.
So yeah, I would definitely check out the website.
Oh yeah, so that's issaquahwa.gov, the city of Issaquah's website. We'll have some of these brochures that you can download and some of these trails. Well, Matt, there's been a wealth of information you've given today, and I really appreciate you being the first person to join me on Uniquely Issaquah.
You betcha.
And I want to thank everyone who's listening for joining us on our first episode of Uniquely Issaquah. For more information on upcoming episodes of Uniquely Issaquah, you can like us on Facebook at City of Issaquah, or follow us on Twitter at City of Issaquah. Once again, all this information is at the City of Issaquah website at issaquahwa.gov. Thank you for joining us and listening to Uniquely Issaquah. Stay unique.